So now we're in San Marcos, and you know who lives in San Marcos? It's my friend Carolina from the last San Antonio video I did. Not the last one, a while ago, San Antonio video. She's up here sitting on a tractor trailer that's been so very obviously wrecked, and we're gonna do off-camera flash. Let me teach you. Alright, so a lot of people get intimidated by off-camera flash. It's not that intimidating, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So first we're going to get a picture without the off-camera flash, and then we're going to get a picture with the off-camera flash, and I'll show you the difference. Watch this. So I'm going to take this off, and we're going to put it in aperture priority mode, and we'll get one without it. So this is what it looks like without the off-camera flash. I'm gonna put this back on. We're gonna go into manual mode, and now we're gonna use off-camera flash. I'll show you the difference. All right, so here's without, here's with. It gives you that cool editorial look. It's totally worth doing. Off-camera flash. Here's the basics. First step is you're gonna underexpose your scene. So, and you're not gonna go above 1/200th of a second. So anything 1/200th of a second, anything slower than that, you're good to go. You're gonna underexpose. So if you don't know your basic aperture, ISO, shutter speed, find that on the internet. Get used to it, and then underexpose it by about 2 stops. And then you're gonna add your trigger and you're gonna take a shot. And it's real simple. Underexpose the scene, add the flash in, turn it down when it's too bright, turn it up when it's not bright enough. I don't know how to make it more simple than that. This is tricky to light because the aisle is narrow and the base of the stand is wide, but worth it. Okay, so once you have your basic exposure, then this is awkwardly close.
I know.
Then what you want to do is you want to control the ambient light with your shutter speed. You want to control the light from the strobe with your aperture. So shutter speed is for ambient light if you want more or less, and then your aperture is for the brightness of the strobe, unless you want to turn the strobe up and down. But this is down all the way it'll go, so we're going to do the aperture to make it less. And then ISO just turns everything up and down. So there you go. So now we're just gonna shoot for a second, and maybe I'll tell you something in studio when I think of it. We'll jump to that here now. That was a little fast. I'm sorry. Let me be a little bit more detailed with you. With off-camera flash, you're lighting your subject differently than your background. And you're using a very brief but very bright light source to do it. What makes it sometimes tricky and intimidating is you can't see that light source when you're setting up the shot. The first thing I can tell you is experiment with it. Get you a cheap speed light, get you a cheap stand, get you an umbrella. Cheap speed light, sub $100. Comes with a little transmitter. Umbrella, just a cheapo shoot through umbrella and a stand. And you're started. You're good to go. By the way, this is what I did for a very long time. It's still a setup I really enjoy using instead of the fancy stuff that I have. So I'll put a link down below. It's an affiliate link. It helps me a little bit, but it doesn't cost you any extra. Click it if you're going to do some Amazon shopping. But it's really quick and easy to get started. So spend a little bit of money, sub $100. Like, grab one of those Christmas gift cards you got and just go get you a flash and an umbrella and a stand. And you're golden. You're started. Play with it. Experiment. That's the number one thing I can tell you is experiment. And as you experiment, here's some principles to keep in mind so that you start getting the images that you want to get, which is the point, which is the goal, which is what I want to help you with. So first thing you want to do when you're planning out your shoot with an off-camera flash is decide what you want the feel to be. A couple of things you want to check off. One is hardness versus softness. And what I mean by that is the hardness or softness of the light on the subject, whether it's a model or a client or a product or a flower, it's the same thing. Do you want a hard light or a soft light on the subject? Here's the rule of thumb for hardness of light. The closer and bigger relative to the subject in your frame, the softer the light. So if I got, instead of a smallish softbox, if I got a giant, actually I have an umbrella somewhere around here, a giant 5-foot umbrella, it would be a lot softer, especially as I move it closer to me and is bigger relative to me in the frame. If I want to make it harder, I can take the baffle off, I can push it further away, and I can even remove the whole softbox. The closer and relative to the subject, bigger the light source is, the softer it is. The further away and relative to the subject, smaller the light source is, the harder it is. So think about the sun on a clear day at noon. It's very, very far away, and relative to the subject is very, very small. So it makes very, very hard light and very hard shadows across their face. So hard versus soft. It's the first thing to think about. So your next consideration is going to be between subtle and dramatic. What I mean by that is I'm talking about the difference between the exposure of your subject and the exposure of your background. For instance, this lighting setup is very dramatic because I'm well lit-ish and the background is black. Yeah, it's a question of how much do you want to underexpose your background, basically. That is something that sets the feel of the whole photo. If you want to be more dramatic, you're going to underexpose your background more. If you want to be more subtle, all you're going to do is use the flash to fill in shadows. Here's some dramatic ones where I've underexposed the background and properly exposed my subject. And here's some more subtle ones where everything is properly exposed. I'm just adding a little bit of pop, a little bit of light, and a little bit of shadow fill to the subject. First thing is how hard or soft do you want the light on the subject to be? Second thing is how dramatic do you want the difference between the exposure of the subject and the exposure of the background to be? Third thing is you're going to think about highlights. And I don't mean highlights in the sense of the exposure curve. I mean highlights in the sense of, do you want anything to pop aside from just liking the lighting this way? I've also included this hair light on purpose because it gives a highlight to me on this side of my body. Instead of fading into the background, it kind of outlines my shoulder there and gives a little pop, a little highlight. Those are things that you need to consider. Sometimes when I'm lighting a scene and I go, it's almost there, then I remember, I should add a hair light because they're fading into the background on the shadow side. Or sometimes you can add a pop of light to something in the background. Maybe you've got the background underexposed, but you're going to add something to the background. Ooh, I've got a photo. This one, where I didn't want the car to fade into the background. Because the whole point is like, this is a senior photo. She's with her car. That's where her friends hang out. And so we don't want to forget that the car is as much a part of the portrait as she is. So we put a flash inside the car to just kind of highlight and bring out the car. So those are the three things you want to decide beforehand. Hard or soft light on the subject, dramatic or subtle difference between the subject and the background, and highlights that you want in the background or on the subject. And at that point, you can start building your shot. So when you start to build your shot, you want to expose for your background first. So turn the flashes off and get the background exposure the way you want it to be. Because the basic idea, the reason I call building a shot is because you're going to add one light source at a time. So the first light source is what we call ambient light. That's the light that's already in the room or on the set or on the scene that you're in. And so you're going to expose for that first. There's a lot of ways to get it knocked down. You can have a faster shutter speed, but if you're not shooting a special kind of flash called high speed sync, you want to limit that shutter speed to 1/250th of a second. I normally don't go above 1/200th of a second just to be safe. If you go faster than that, you're going to get this weird shutter curtain effect where half your frame is dark and half of it is bright, and that's not what you're going for. So keep that shutter speed 250 or below. Then you can stop down on your aperture, but if you want a narrow depth of field and you don't have high speed sync, make sure your ISO is as low as it'll go, and then add a neutral density filter. Also got a link to one of those down below from Amazon. It's another affiliate link, but hey, help me out. I'm helping you out. That's, I hope. You want to get that background to be what you want it to look like in the final image before you add any flashes. So once you've done that, then start adding one flash at a time. 90% of the time, I only have one flash. I use ambient light and a single flash, and that works just perfectly. But if you're going to use more than one flash, only do one at a time. So I've got a great example. I've got this knife. I wanted to do a little product shoot with it. And so here's some images where I built that shot out. So the first thing is, since I was in studio, and when you're in a studio and you're using a flash, you want a black frame with no flashes on. So if all the flashes are off and you take a picture, you want that frame to be completely black. So that's what I did in the studio here. So here's one of those black frames. And then I just started adding the lights. So I added one with a snoot because I wanted like a nice hard splash of light across the frame. And then I added a kind of a highlight, a hair light, but there's no hair. I don't know what to call it. A rim light, a side light to the back. And I kind of figured out where I wanted to put that. And then finally I added a key light to give just kind of a nice, soft, but directional image over the whole thing. And when I went and built it out and put it all together, this is one of the final images. So yeah, you just want to isolate each light one at a time and build that shot out. And then you're good to go. It's really a lot simpler than a lot of people make it out to be. Especially with digital photography, you're not wasting film to take a test shot. You get to see it immediately. With digital photography, off-camera flash is so simple and so easy that there's no reason not to do it. At least to know. At least to have some extra mastery over light. That's your job as a photographer. The only other thing to be aware of is that when you move or when your subject moves, you need to adjust your lighting and your settings. So if your subject gets further away from the light, you need to turn up the power on the light, or you need to adjust your aperture or something, or move the light with them. Because you can see as I move back, it gets darker, right? The only other added complication is that your settings start to do some different things. I'm going to make it easy for you. If you change your ISO, the whole scene will change. Turn your ISO up, the whole scene gets brighter. Turn your ISO down, the whole scene gets darker. If you change your aperture, it will change the appearance of the flash on the subject. And if you change your shutter speed, it will change the exposure of the ambient light. And so if you need to turn up your flash, but you don't want to walk over and you don't have a fancy system where you can do it remotely, just open your aperture up a little bit. So I hope that helps you. I hope that you have, I hope to have demystified part of photography for you. I hope that I've made it more enjoyable for you. If I have, subscribe, like, comment. If you have any questions, comment. In the new year, my one New Year's resolution is to be better about answering comments on YouTube. So comment with any questions you've got. And thank you for watching. Thank you for caring. Thank you for using the affiliate links below. God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Bye.